This book is kind of like if Brandon Sanderson wrote a Harry Potter book, but Harry only showed up in his interludes, those interim chapters of his that kind of bridge the gap between the actual parts of the story, you know? I'm just saying, The Dragon Reborn is an odd title choice for this book. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sandbox. I know it's been a while since you've seen me here in my studio. It's been a very busy fall, busy year really, with me planning for a wedding that is happening later this month. But hey, I'm here, I'm back, and I'm excited to talk more books with y'all. We are continuing with the Wheel of Time book reviews. Today's featuring book number 3, The Dragon Reborn. This is a shorter book of this series so far, but it's an excellent continuation of the two before it. Like the first two, it's not perfect. It has some plot conveniences and coincidental world-building elements as Jordan is still fully fleshing out his world and his characters and rules, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And I look forward to discussing this one with you guys, so do be sure to give your thoughts on the book or the series as a whole in the comments below. This review will be as spoiler-free as possible, but if I do delve into spoilers, I will give you guys a warning so that you can skip ahead. And likewise, if you guys are going to have any comments that have spoilers in them, please be courteous and just give people a warning. If you are not caught up with this series up to this point, pause this video and come back after you've read the first two. But if you are here because you're not quite sure if the Wheel of Time is a series that's right for you, I do have some other reviews for those first two that are more spoiler-free, so you can check those out and see if the series is one worth picking up. But with that said, let's get into the review. Kicking things off with the writing component, I think the overall tone of the book is a great continuation of the first two, with again some noticeable improvement in prose. And as for pacing, I'm leaving it at 8.5. I know some people think this one might have more peaks and troughs within its pacing, and I definitely did slow down a tad in the middle like I do with any book, but for me it has less conveniences in the plot than The Great Hunt had, which I think helped to even it out. Now, it is possible that I've just come to expect those conveniences after reading The Eye of the World and The Great Hunt, but there's just something about this book that really pushes you to keep reading. As for the themes, again, it's continuing with the same ones from the first two. Matt and Perrin do bring more to the table now that they share the spotlight a bit more over Rand, but I'd say it's a fairly even trade-off. But moving on to the actual story, I did move premise up a notch from 8 to 8.5, but I left plot at 8. After the first two, I was dying to know more about the Dragon Reborn and the One Power. I wanted to see more of the power being used and learn how it works. I wanted to hear about all of those prophecies surrounding the dragon, and I'll say that this book oddly delivers, and yet at the same time doesn't. Here's a quick spoiler alert. Go to the timestamp below to avoid hearing who the Dragon Reborn is. For one, the title is a bit of false advertising, at least for new readers, as you would imagine it has all to do with Rand and him facing these prophecies and consequences that come with them. And while it does do that, he's entirely off screen. So in that way, the book disappointed me a bit, as he was my favorite going into this. However, you do get to hear those prophecies, and boy oh boy are there a ton of them. You've got Aes Sedai prophecies, Aiel prophecies, more premonitions from men and these rumors amongst these towns that they're passing through. I mean, there are a ton, and I loved every single bit of it. However, I did also kind of feel burned out after a while. Now, they do all come together in the end, at least the ones pertinent to this volume of the story, but I will say that with each new prophecy given, they start to lose that trait that makes them special, at least for me personally. And as far as the stakes go, when you have all of these different prophecies being thrown at you, it's hard to believe that these characters that you're falling in love with are in any real danger. However, that said, I will say that the newer creatures and Dark One's henchmen that are introduced here are just outright terrifying, if albeit a bit odd.
So yeah, and then they run into shadow wolves. They run into shadow wolves. Yeah. You can't see them because they're shadows. Yeah. And then they come across some gray men. Yeah. They're guys that are so average looking that you don't notice them. Well, you notice them, but they're so average looking that you notice them, and so you don't really notice them. Robert, how much acid did you take? Like, what? Oh, acid? Acid? How much acid did I take? A lot. No, really, quite a bit, yeah.
As for the action in this book, it feels smaller scale than The Great Hunt, but entirely more focused and technical. And while there are some moments of spectacle in here, you're still learning the rules of the magic system and world, so it's hard to fully appreciate them quite yet. But that's enough about these story elements. Let's talk about the characters that actually make it work. And again, I think the heroes, their relationships, and their varying motives and backgrounds are really what makes this story work. There are tons of crazy things being thrown at you with each new chapter, so these characters really do act as the anchor to keep the story however grounded that it can be. Again, jump to the timestamp below if you don't want to hear who the Dragon Reborn is. With Rand taking a back seat, I think Matt and Perrin really do a lot of legwork. We get to see how big Perrin's heart is here, and we get to see a lot more of Matt's character, aka who he is when no one is watching and when there are no Aes Sedai to hold his strings. We also get a lot more of the girls here, most notably Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve, and their part in the story actually does remind me quite a lot of Harry Potter, because you have the Amyrlin seat, aka the Dumbledore of the White Tower, basically coming up to them and being like, hey kids, want to go on a quest for me? I know you know basically nothing, but would you mind taking on, I don't know, my greatest enemy, who is also someone that's fairly close and personal to me? Like, she is one of the most powerful and respected magic users within this world, and yet she has to rely on some complete newbies because she has no idea who she can trust now that the Black Aja, or Death Eaters, to continue this analogy, have infiltrated their organization. And honestly, as ludicrous as this part of the story was, it was the one that interested me the most. It felt alive and magical and exciting, and I loved learning more about the One Power and the world alongside all three of these characters. You do have to suspend your disbelief at times, but the story behind these characters I just always found riveting to read. Now, the villain component is taking a bit of a dip here, as it's not as focused as the two before it. Eye of the World and Great Hunt really honed in on Baalzamon, but here we learn more about other threats that are going on around them. Overall, the characters here felt like they went on great journeys, they made great new acquaintances, giving us more additions to the cast, and they were set up for the next book really well. But let's address the world building component, as this has been the most controversial one to me so far with the series, and it remains my biggest gripe with this book. Simply put, there is just too much being thrown at you within The Dragon Reborn. I still think it's a solid continuation of the first two, and it helps to set up the next book or two really well, but these first three have all had parts that felt trivial or convenient, in that Robert Jordan comes up with these fantastical situations, but then comes up with even more fantastical solutions to get them out of it. It oftentimes feels like an ever-growing ladder where there's no real end in sight, and right when you think you've discovered the scope or limitations of this world and its magic users, well, there's something else that just changes the game entirely. Jordan keeps inventing these new types of dark friends or shadow spawn, I think I'm using those terms correctly, where it's getting to the point that it's just, okay, why didn't the Dark One just send all of these guys in the very beginning and just be one and done with it? Hopefully I get the answers to these questions, and maybe I already have and just missed it with everything else being thrown at me. However, even if I do get these answers, and if I get them soon, I still want Jordan to kind of pull it back a bit and let the series feel more real and consequential. Now, to be fair, the things he's come up with are absolutely amazing and mesmerizing, and this is just my biggest issue so far. And for my biggest issue to basically be that this fantasy series is too fantastical sometimes, it's not a bad one to have. All in all, the lore, the history, the cultures, the magic system, they all make for a thorough and immersive experience that makes the book hard to put down. And I look forward to the next book and seeing how Jordan capitalizes on everything he's established so far. Especially since I hear that the fourth book is most fans' favorite, at least of the most vocal fans. I think there are some things that this book does better than The Great Hunt and vice versa, but overall, I think these are great books to read back to back, even though I did have a year in between the reads myself. So I'm giving The Dragon Reborn an 8.5 to match my score for The Great Hunt. It's a great continuation of the first two books with noticeable improvement in many areas, but still leaving Jordan plenty of room to expand in not only the story and world, but his technical skills and storytelling ability. If you enjoyed this book review, don't be a stranger. You can check out the rest of my book reviews right here with this playlist, especially if you want to hear about my thoughts on the first 2 Wheel of Time books. I've also been tinkering with a 2-minute book review format for books that I just don't have the time to dedicate a full review for, or for ones that I think have been reviewed enough and talked to death. I mainly put them out because 1, they're fun to make, and 2, they help you have a better understanding of my preferences and help you gauge whether our tastes align or not. I just recently put one out for Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, so if you're a fan of reading and the Jurassic films, go check that out and see if this book is right for you. But if you're here for strictly Wheel of Time content, I also have an episode ranking for Amazon Prime's adaptation of the series, and I'll be doing the same for Season 2, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss that. Anyways, that's enough from me. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and sharing it with another wheelie, as that is what helps the channel out the most. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you all next time.